Hello and welcome to Genre Chat. I'm Cherrilynn Bisbano. This week we're talking about flash fiction. Our author this week is Andrew Winch of Splickety. Andrew, welcome. Tell us about yourself.
Hey, yeah, I've been writing flash fiction for 10 years or so, and editing for Splickety for almost that long, probably 7 years for Splickety. But I'm the executive editor there. I work alongside the editor in chief and founder of Splickety, which is Ben Wolf, and then Arpit Mehta is our artistic genius behind everything. So the three of us kind of figurehead the company, so to speak, and we're supported and kept in line by a plethora of wonderful staff as well. But we put out three different imprints. We put out Havoc magazine, which is speculative fiction, sci-fi and fantasy, and then Spark, which is romance, and then Splickety magazine, which is our masthead, and that is general fiction. And we are actually transitioning that to YA, to young adult, in 2018. So we put out one magazine a month, alternating between the three imprints, and each imprint has its own editorial staff and everything. So we put out three magazines. We do have a blog as well, flash blog that is updated daily, and we have a couple other partnerships, but that keeps us pretty busy with what we have there, and they're all flash fiction.
Oh, I would think so. 3 magazines and a blog. That's a lot. That's quite a bit.
Yeah.
Why did you choose flash fiction in this genre?
Flash fiction has a lot of appeal, I think, especially to new writers. I think as we get into the craft, we're not immediately thinking, oh, I can tackle a manuscript, I can tackle a full novel. Some people think that, and most of those people are wrong. But I think flash fiction isn't as daunting as full length, but it still has all that same complexity and beauty as a novel length would. Some would say, and I would sometimes agree, that flash fiction can be even more beautiful because of its focused scope. My first story it came from a single idea, which was, what if good werewolves were hunting an evil man? And so then I kind of took that idea, and with that single idea, I was able to create a detailed story world, rich characters, and a complex plot within 1,000 words, and I was hooked. You can really just dig into the meat of a story without having to worry about multiple plot arcs and was what you said on page 47 continuous with what you said on page 142. You can really focus in on creating a beautiful work. So that's why I got into it.
That sounds interesting. I want to know, did the werewolves get the bad man?
Absolutely, they did. They ripped him to shreds. Yeah. It's called Wolf Huntin. It's actually it was in the first issue of Splickety, and that's how I got the job at Splickety with Ben. As I published that, and he was impressed, so he took me on.
Oh, wonderful! So
you have to dig back a ways to find it.
I'll have to. I can find that online, right, on Splickety.com.
You sure can. Yep, that's
cool.
right.
I'll have to look for that.
On Amazon also. Yeah.
Oh, wow! Wonderful.
Yeah, all of our issues are on Amazon.
Now, what is the greatest lesson you've learned, Andrew, writing in flash fiction genre?
I think the biggest thing is, like you said, trimming the fat. And probably the biggest component of that for me and for a lot of writers is starting where the story starts and then finishing when it's done. I think flash fiction doesn't allow time for a slow buildup of backstory or a meandering, dull conclusion or resolution. I really love, even in my novel length now, being able to really throw the reader into a story without them being lost. So it really teaches the talent of delivering that story right where it starts, and then feeding them what little backstory they need. You'd be surprised how little backstory a reader actually needs, even feeding it throughout the story. It just naturally comes out. You don't have to make a point of it. And flash fiction has really taught me that, and it's strengthened my writing because of it.
Are there books on how to write good flash fictions or websites? I know Splickety has a great website, but where would you send writers who want to learn about flash fiction?
The best book I've found is called The Rose Metal Press Field Guide to Flash Fiction, or to Writing Flash Fiction. I might take a little journey here and pick it up. Sorry, we're moving.
Great.
Right on my bookshelf, pretty close to me. So
Great.
it's right there. So
Field Guide to Writing Flash Fiction. And who wrote that?
It's a fantastic book. It's edited by Tara Massa, but it is a conglomeration of several amazing flash fiction writers. And it actually has one of my favorite quotes. Let me see. Actually, I have it here. And it's by Ron Carlson, who is a very well-known flash fiction writer. And he says, "After a flash, an image burns on the eye, the visual echo of a moment. Don't wait to be ready. Start before you know what you're saying. Hell, start right now. No, now.
I love that.
I feel like that really embodies flash fiction. You know, it's a flash, literally, in the mind's eye. And so, yeah, writing flash fiction by the Rose Metal Press is it really embodies the essence of writing flash fiction. So if you're just getting into the genre, you can be very inspired by it because it gives examples of the strengths and weaknesses of flash fiction without giving you guidelines. And I think that's a necessary evil of a lot of imprints, including Splickety, is we kind of have grown to be known for a certain type of flash fiction that you will find reading our stories. They all feel like a complete story, a reduced version of a novel, you know, a beginning, middle, and an end. But that doesn't have to be the case with flash fiction. You can write prose poems. You can write things that don't have an ending. You can write a single idea or write it from the viewpoint of a grape if you want to. It doesn't matter. But that's what this book is good at, is showing you all the potential you can have for flash fiction, and then you can write what you love and then find an outlet for it. You don't have to write stories for Splickety in the way Splickety wants. We're one version of flash fiction. So to answer your question.
Are there specific elements that must be in a flash fiction story?
Nope. Entertain. I think that's the number one goal, like I said, of flash fiction. Flash fiction readers are looking to be inspired. They're looking to sit down for 2.5 minutes. What did they used to call them? Smoke long quarterlies. They used to, because back whenever flash fiction started, it got its start, they used to be called smoke long fiction, because that's how long it took to smoke a cigarette. It was to read a story. So if your reader is reading any longer than that, you're not doing it right. And if they're forgetting it that quickly, you're not doing it right. So I would say that's what you want to put in your flash fiction, is a story short enough for them to walk away in a couple minutes, but strong enough for them to be thinking about it all day. So a strong central idea. I just said you don't have to do anything but entertain, but you want to wrap that around a very strong central idea, whatever that may be.
Now, what do you read, or what do you recommend people read? I know like people like Jerry B. Jenkins, Cecil Murphy, the people who teach writing say read to become a good writer in your genre. Right. What would you recommend them to read?
In the genre?
Yeah, or even outside the genre to become a good flash fiction writer.
Yeah, definitely read flash fiction, obviously. But, some of my favorite flash fiction writers aren't even necessarily flash fiction writers, like H.P. Lovecraft or Edgar Allan Poe. They wrote short stories before writing short stories was cool. And they weren't doing the 10,000 word short stories that are defined now. They weren't doing the 1,000 word flash fiction that were defined. They were writing the story that needed to be written. And however long that took was how long they did it. And some of their stories are very short because, again, they have that central tight theme. They punch you in the face with an idea and then they walk away, so they're not trying to create something they're not trying to create. So I would say find an author that you connect with, because I love those two writers, because I write in the same genres. I love centralized, as in the senses, suspense. And so that's why I connect with them. That doesn't mean everybody will, but I can see their genius in their short writings because I like their genres, not flash fiction, but horror and suspense. So that would be my biggest advice, would be to find a genre within the genre that you can find the brilliance in and read those.
So do you find it harder to write flash fiction or a full-length novel, and why?
Starting, I still have to say full length, because I approach full length like flash fiction, in that I want every word to count. I want every paragraph to be a puzzle that I have to iron out and figure out. It's all, it's art, so it's never going to be finished. But I think flash fiction is harder to walk away from sometimes, because again, you're tweaking little things. You're taking out a word here. When are you done with that? Whereas a novel, you have to give up because you're exhausted, or the editor is breathing down your neck, type of thing. So I would say novel length is still harder, but flash fiction is probably more valuable to an up and coming writer, because you're learning the craft better writing flash fiction.
Right. And can you expound on that a little bit? Learning the craft better for flash fiction?
Yeah. So, I wrote like the people I said that were arrogant enough to think that they were ready to write a novel. And I think most novelists do this. They write that first book and it's horrible and it goes in that drawer and nobody ever reads it. Then they learn the craft. So I think that first failure sometimes is important, but there are plenty of authors that Tosca Lee comes to mind. She says that she learned doing online story games, a Dungeons and Dragons type of setting.
Oh.
So she never considered writing a novel until she learned how to write deftly and accurately, just in a free form kind of environment. But for those of us that didn't do that, who actually wanted to be rich and famous before they knew how to do anything, flash fiction is great, because you do learn the beginning, middle, and end. You do learn what works and what doesn't. And your failures, your frequent failures, take you half an hour to learn. Then you wad it up and throw it away and do another one. A novel takes you months and months to write, and then you look back and realize it was a failure. That's a huge waste, not a huge waste of time, but it's not as efficient as the trial and error of flash fiction, because you can step back from it and truly see what you've created in one computer screen instead of scrolling through. So that essentially, without going into the mechanics of writing fiction, which
that would be a long time. We could do that for days and days and days.
Exactly. Yeah. So
is there a specific length that a amount of words that flash fiction should stay within, like guidelines?
Yeah. Most publishers of flash fiction say under 1,000 words. Some go 800 or 1,200 or even up to 2,000. But I think the spirit of flash fiction and us at Splickety would put a hard line on 1,000 words. And again, that becomes challenging, because writers will write, I'm going to write 1,200 and then I'll edit, and then the story feels very thin. They're cutting out that flow that they're looking for brevity. So the challenge of flash fiction is obviously writing within that parameter. So 1,000 words is what we put on it. Splickety.
Now, are there any online websites or groups? Does Splickety have a group where people can go and learn and maybe compare, or
that would be a wonderful thing, wouldn't it? And we actually have we that's in the works with Splickety as well. As there's a speculative fiction Christian conference, Realm Makers, that is kind of up and growing, and they've created some online Facebook pages and things like that, where there's just a community there, and Splickety is to the point where our blog, we want to foster that as well, but we just haven't got to that point. But obviously, like I said, with our blog, we encourage dialogue and conversation. But if you run across something, let me know, because I'm sure it's out there.
Yeah.
We haven't found it yet.
There was one, but they've closed down. They closed their website, I think, about 2 years ago.
Okay.
But contests, should even new flash fiction writers enter contests?
Yeah, usually contests, you're paying for the potential for the prize, but you're also paying for feedback. Contests
Mhm.
generally, a little bit more editing goes into all the rejections and the accepted ones. So one, if you're paying money, you're going to take it more seriously, right?
Mhm.
It's a cost value return. And two, like I said, whenever you get that story back, you're going to know why you didn't stack up to the ones that did get picked. So, and it's just fun. Like I said, there's fun and the anticipation of, how will my story do? And then most contests do have a theme. So you get to have a template and say, and it's a challenge to write within that template. So yeah, it's not for everyone. Like I said, some people don't like that competition. They don't like that. They can't handle that failure quite as well, especially if they're putting money into it. But I personally love contests.
Yeah, well, you had mentioned that it is very valuable to get feedback in your writing. One of the biggest things that I've learned is even some of the best-selling authors, they get rejected, they get feedback still, they're still learning the craft themselves.
Yeah.
So what kind of
It's
advice do you
amazing.
have for people who don't want to deal with feedback?
I will tell you, so now at Splickety, I pretty much only edit the featured authors, which are kind of one big name author in each episode or in each issue. And I mean, I do that because I love working with them, but also they're the easiest to work with. If they get to that level, they're used to the feedback. They're used to learning. They're used to everybody's different style for who they're publishing for. So
Mm.
if you're not willing to have feedback, you're not going to go very far. Is what I'll tell you. You have to have thick skin and you have to be open because, like I said, if you're not published yet, there's a reason. It's not just because you haven't come across the right editor that loves your story, that nobody understands your brilliance. You have to grow, and I think I know I've edited over 1 million words between Splickety and my own stuff. And it's amazing how much I've grown just from editing, like I said, my own stuff and other people's stuff, learning. Like I said, I keep saying it, but learning the craft, you can't learn unless you get out of your bubble. Us as writers tend to be introverts, but the best way to be a communal introvert is to not have to face someone face to face, right? So you get to converse with these people and you get to learn from them in a way that you don't have the stresses of large groups and things like that. So take it and realize that they're putting the time into it to teach you. So be appreciative of that.
Yeah, that's great advice. Now, do you have any works in progress yourself beside all the stuff you're doing with Splickety and the other magazines? Do you have a personal work in progress?
Yeah, all the works in progress, right? We have these ideas, we have to get it out of our head. So I just wrote a flash fiction for a feature or a staff feature for Splickety in the Whodunit issue, which I think comes out it comes out in September.
Who done it? That sounds cool.
Yeah, it's a detective themed issue. It was I won't share too much, but it's a fun Texas setting, and it's got a fun little twist to it. So I just wrote that. My current novel, work in progress, is a space horror, essentially. Like all my stuff, my flash fiction or my noveling, I always start with the grand idea. Everybody starts differently. Ooh, this kind of character would be great, or this kind of setting. The way my brain thinks, I always start with an idea. So this one is, I think I don't remember what I was reading, but the cogito ergo sum, I think therefore I am, popped up in something, and the idea came to me of, what if they think therefore I am? What if there was a cyborg that had the collective consciousness of a crew and it synthesized that into one consciousness? So that kind
Wow.
of developed into my kind of tagline, which was, and I have that here as well, is who's to blame when the collective consciousness of 7 crew members turns their android captain homicidal? So then you get, these, it's almost like a mystery dinner, of somebody dies. So was it someone on the ship that killed him, or was it the captain? And if it was the captain, that means that one of its components of its consciousness is murderous. So that one of the crew members
Oh,
still is murderous. So it's a lot
wow.
of fun there, to be able to. I mean, that story pretty much writes itself. Yeah. So in that scenario, I'm just creating a bunch of really cool characters and letting the story write itself. You know, it's you can start with that base. So that's how I love to write, and then I don't have to worry about failing halfway through.
Cool. Now, you mentioned editing on your own. Do you accept manuscripts to edit? And if so, if somebody wanted a manuscript, wanted you to review and maybe edit your stuff, their stuff for them, how would they get a hold of you?
I do. I am actually a full-time physical therapist. So I usually take one manuscript at a time, and I still get them back in a timely manner. But like I said, I just don't accept that many. But that doesn't mean that I'm hard to get in with. You know, it just you just have to contact me and see what my, you know, if my rates line up with what you want. And like I said, as executive editor at Splickety, I've turned that into a bunch of freelance editing, which, you know, to a bunch of big names, Jerry Jenkins and Robert Leporullo and Tosca Lee and several other ones as well. But anyway, so if you want to get a hold of me, if you're interested in that, you can just email me as the easiest way. And that's Andrew James Winch. That's AndrewJamesWinch, Andrew James Winch @gmail.com. You can also find me on Facebook, Andrew Winch. Let's see. Yeah, my Twitter is pretty pitiful, but I'm on there as well. But you can, honestly, the easiest way to get a hold of me is to go to splickety.com and look up our editing services, and I'm on there, and you can get a hold of me that way too. So I do have a weekly blog, not that it has anything to do with editing, but if you're interested in kind of who I am as a person, you can go to raisingsupergirl.com and see my fun with family and therapy and writing and everything else.
And your two daughters, is that what that's about? Your two daughters? Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
That's wonderful.
My 6 or almost 7-week-old and 3-year-old. So I'm in the pit now. I'm loving it, and you know, every day is a little different.
And your family, do they give you material to write about? Do they?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. Especially on the blog. Like I said, it's almost like my public journal, you know, so.
Oh, I should go read. I'll go read it. I actually followed you today on Twitter.
Cool. So yeah, you'll be able to get up there. That pops up there every week. Every Wednesday I have a new blog, but yeah, they're always entertaining, always doing something. Some of my stuff, people love, some of it's a little more controversial, but all of it's fun.
Oh, then I definitely have to go because I like controversial.
Yeah.
I can be a little controversial myself, within the limits, of course, but you know, I don't think in the box. I like to think outside the box.
Right.
And I think that's what makes you a good flash fiction writer, because you think outside the box. Now, we only have a few minutes left.
Sure.
Do you have any parting words of wisdom for somebody who wants to write flash fiction, whether they're a beginner, intermediate, or been doing it for a long time?
Yeah. So a couple things specific to flash fiction that are kind of general, but really help people have a place to start. Don't be afraid to fail. So you just have to have fun, you know, and with that, the key things that I've seen people screw up with is don't have too many characters or settings. So if you start with a cast like you would in a novel, or think you're going to have 4 different scene changes within 1,000 words, you're wrong. It's just not be a good story. And then the other big thing is the twist at the end. Everybody says, you know, do I have to have a big twist? No, you don't. You have to have a satisfying ending that leaves the reader thinking. So you don't want to have a slow ending, but a strong climax that ties that story together, oftentimes in flash fiction, is going to look like a twist. So don't be afraid of having that hokey twist. Because if you think about it, that's every climax is revealing the inner truth of your character or your story. So have a twist, don't have a twist. It's up to you if you call it that, but have a strong climax. And then as far as just regular writing in general goes, you said, you know, read a lot, but the other side of that is just write. And I said I've edited a million words, and I've written half that much. And I've learned with every word I've written. So don't be afraid to fail and just keep writing.
Thank you. Great words of wisdom. Thank you, Andrew, for joining us here on Genre Chat.
Thank you. It was a pleasure.